Hello, everyone, and welcome to this ESRC Festival of Social Science session. And this session is all about reality TV. And I've got some colleagues with me from my department, and we're all from the Department of Sociological Studies here at the University of Sheffield. My name is Xavier L'Hoiry. I'm a lecturer in criminology and social policy. And with me here to talk about reality TV, I have my colleagues Kitty and Adam, and they can introduce themselves. Kitty.
Hello, my name's Kitty Nichols, and I am a specialist in gender and masculinity studies in the department. So I'm going to talk a little bit about reality TV and those topics today.
And my name's Adam Carter, and I'm interested in the sociology of comedy and humour. And at the moment, I'm working on a Brexit and family life project.
Excellent. Hi, everyone. So we're here because all three of us feel that reality TV is something that's valuable and worthy of academic attention and some sort of scholarly analysis, if you like. And we think that there are various ways that you can explore reality TV as a cultural artifact that tells us something about everyday life. And you can apply sociological and even criminological lenses to this analysis. And we see that reality TV does have an increasingly large part to play in everyday life, in the things around us. Look at the recent controversy around the performance of diversity in Britain's Got Talent, and which was all about Black Lives Matter, and that prompted lots of discussion, lots of complaints, and lots of discourse around a key kind of socio-cultural and political issue in contemporary life. And that's just one example of many different ways in which reality TV can and does have an important impact on our lives. So we're just going to start by having a look at some examples of reality TV, and each one of us is going to just talk a little bit about why we find these examples interesting, including from kind of a scholarly point of view. So, Adam, do you want to go first and tell us a little bit about your example of reality TV and why you find it interesting?
Okay, so the example that I chose was is Driving School, which was a 1997 docu-soap about learner drivers and their teachers. It was over a 6-part series. It was only one series, and it stands out because it's often claimed that it created the first kind of reality TV star, which was Maureen Rees, who was one of the learner drivers, and she was pretty hopeless, had spent thousands of pounds on lessons, had failed her test multiple times, and then they brought in the theory test. And she found it very difficult to pass the theory test as well, all of that sort of thing. Now, so the reason I chose it was because of this kind of place in history, but also because of its relationship to other forms of television. So obviously with the word docu-soap, its relationship to documentary, so it had a narrator. Its relationship to soap, it has storylines that they follow over the course of a series. But also, I think, and I'm obviously going to say this because I'm interested in humour and comedy, it has a real relationship with comedy. So I went back and watched the first episode of this. It's all on YouTube, so fill your boots if you fancy it. And it sets itself up. There's certain bits that look like comedy sketches, that are set up like comedy sketches. It has jaunty comedic music. The narrator is not a straight up narrator. The narrator is sardonic and sarcastic. And so it has much more. It has a relationship with so many different forms of television. The other reason that I wanted to mention it is that at the time, I do not remember it being called reality television. I do remember this term docu-soap, and I just wonder at what point that form of television sort of turns into this other concept, and what then makes reality TV distinct from other forms of television. If it's borrowing from some other forms of television, what makes reality TV sort of distinct in its own right? One suggestion might be that it has more of a relationship or an explicit relationship with celebrity culture. So I mentioned earlier Maureen. She went on to record a single which got to number 49 in the chart. So it wasn't a massive success, but it's still an indication of this blurring between different kind of cultural sectors. She appeared on This Is Your Life. If you remember This Is Your Life, this program that celebrated particular people of note. She also then turned up on television a few years later in Channel 5's Back to Reality TV series, which is almost like a greatest hits of reality stars up to that point. So again, it just has this relationship with celebrity culture, which maybe reality TV gets us a little bit closer to. And the last thing I wanted to say, and what really interested me, and going back to it really highlighted, is that this program has a lot to say, particularly about the social class issue. So Maureen is a cleaner. Most of her meager wages at that point goes towards driving lessons, and she wants to learn to drive so that she can become a freelance cleaner and earn more money. And so I just I think we'll talk about this later, but what reality TV can tell us about very interesting and important social issues, I think, is probably underrated. So yeah, those are the key things I really wanted to say about driving school.
Excellent. You're sort of bringing back a few memories there of some very early reality TV viewing for me. I've got a few thoughts, but Kitty, do you want to go ahead first?
Well, yeah, Adam, that's a really, really interesting example. And I think particularly what you're saying about how reality TV offers a lens through which to see these kind of key social issues, but maybe we don't sort of engage with that or think about that at the time. I think with driving school, as you say, the kind of class issue and the fact that, she's sort of struggling to kind of make money, and that this is a kind of way to kind of a different or like better life, I think is really interesting. I wondered if you would have any comments on the kind of way, is it exploitative to watch that kind of thing, and the kind of tensions with us viewing that kind of journey that she's on, if you like.
I mean, that's really interesting. So when I was watching it back this time round, it didn't feel exploitative. There are moments where it feels very tragic, and there's a huge amount of pathos at the end. So Maureen, at the end of this particular episode, doesn't pass the theory test, and so she, you sort of see her dreams shatter before her, right? And it's quite affecting stuff. So it's not all comedy, but I wonder if that's because I've since then seen something like Benefit Street, right, which was just so plainly exploitative. It felt so, like the term that's used quite a lot is poverty porn, yeah, and that doesn't, driving school didn't have that, but in the grand kind of scheme of the history of reality TV, maybe that's where it starts, with these sorts of, like, look at these working class lives as entertainment, and that leads us into the development of something like Benefit Street, where it's look at these people, we're not like those people. Isn't this entertaining? It's I'm not saying that driving school is responsible for Benefit Street, but it might be that it's just that it starts that curve towards that sort of entertainment.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about when you were talking about driving school and kind of the historical place that it has in the development of reality TV. Both, I think, in terms of some of the tools it uses. So you talked about, the kind of sardonic narrator, the sarcastic, almost comedic narrator. And you sort of see that in Come Dine With Me, I think, is the most kind of recent example of a quite a funny narrator, in some ways the funniest part of that show. But also to some extent in Big Brother and in Love Island. I mean, they literally have a comedian who's the narrator. So it's almost like that's that was kind of, that was a precursor of future reality TV shows as a tool. But also, yeah, I had the same thoughts as Kitty around, is this the beginning of kind of this exploitative use of potentially vulnerable people? And I'm not sure that Maureen would describe herself as a vulnerable person, but someone who's economically marginalized or marginalized in some other way, and it's turned into entertainment. who knows? I mean, it's hard to kind of ascribe that to someone, and you know, she's not here to sort of speak for herself, Maureen. I wish she was. But yeah, so I wonder if that's kind of the beginning. And driving school may not have set out to do that, but then when you, maybe we're talking with the benefit of hindsight here, having seen things like Benefit Street and any number of kind of Channel 5 docu-soaps or documentaries around people who live in poverty, you know, you don't know if you're sort of looking back through to things like driving school through that lens. It's hard to say. I'm not sure that was their intention, but maybe they were the beginning of something that developed thereafter.
Yeah, and I think we have to be careful that we don't then say that driving school started the exploitation of working class people in the media. I'm fairly certain it has a longer history than that, even. You know, so or even that there was no representation of working class people before that point that was presented in that particular way. It was always much more serious documentary. So I'm thinking of like 7 Up and 14 Up. Do you remember those sorts of, like, those, which were, I guess you could call those a very, very early form of reality TV, and that they were sort of looking at the lives of these children, some from, you know, working class backgrounds. Would we then say that was exploitation? But it's less open to those sorts of accusations because it's presented as serious, whereas this is much more presented as humorous, and maybe that it feels much more obviously exploitative.
Yeah, no, yeah, I agree. Right, let me just jump right in then with my example, and I'm going right to the other end of the spectrum. So you've gone from kind of the historical end. I'm going to something very contemporary, which is everybody's favorite reality TV show, which is Love Island. So if we have any viewers who have never heard of Love Island, who've come from another planet. So Love Island is a series which usually takes place in the summer, and we have a bunch of single people, male and female, who are sent off to a villa in Spain. And over the course of the summer, they have to couple up. They have to find another person to be in a couple with. And on a weekly basis, if you're not in a couple, then you have to leave the villa. And there are various, as you can imagine, tasks and different setups to try and elicit conflict or comedic moments, etc. Now, Love Island, I think it's fair to say, it has become a real kind of cultural phenomenon for the last couple of years. It's been one of the shows that's had the highest viewers. It's produced kind of lots of merchandise. It's kind of very much become part of the mainstream in terms of conversation, in terms of cultural references in the UK, and it's been exported, as you might expect, to Australia, to America, and lots of different places around the world. And it's made ITV, in particular ITV2, lots and lots of money, because they've been very good about how they market it, how they kind of monetize every aspect of it, and they've been very good at using social media as well as part of that. And it's kind of that latter function that I find interesting, because the perspective that I look at Love Island from is not so much the contestants, and there's lots to say about the contestants, but it's more about the audience, us watching Love Island, and particularly how we consume it. Things like driving school that Adam was talking about, you know, we would consume those things passively. We are presented with the content, we watch it, and that's kind of the end of that relationship. Now, when Big Brother came along, for instance, we moved beyond being totally passive consumers, and we were starting to be given a role in how that narrative developed. You know, we could choose who should leave on a weekly basis, and so we were given some sort of audience power, if you like. Now, the problem with that is that I wonder if that power was a little bit of an illusion. Now, certainly we were voting for people to leave, but the content that we were provided with, what we were actually seeing on TV, was still heavily curated by the producers, right? They could choose what makes the cut for the evening show. So our opinions on contestants, which ultimately determines whether we'd vote for them to stay or not, those opinions were shaped by what we saw, by what we were presented with. So I guess it makes us question what is real about reality TV. Is it really real, or are we presented a version of reality? So that was Big Brother, and we know that since then, there's been hundreds and hundreds of shows in which we, the audience, have the power to decide who wins, who stays, who goes, etc. So then we fast forward to Love Island, and what I find fascinating about Love Island is that the audience suddenly have become much more powerful. We have much more agency as an audience, and that's partly because of social media. So to give you an example, right, a couple of years ago in Love Island, 2018, it's the summer of the World Cup, it's the summer of Love Island, and those two things are very much what that summer's all about. Now there's a particular incident in that series of Love Island, which is when two contestants appear to kiss. Okay, and the big controversy is, did one contestant prompt the kiss? Did the other contestant kiss back? And it's a big thing in the discussion amongst the guests in the house and the participants. Now, this prompted a lot of discussion amongst the audience, particularly on Twitter and on Instagram. Lots of people were talking about what they thought had happened. Now, what started to happen is that people on Twitter started to pool their various knowledge and their various skills, and they unearthed, they looked at different camera angles in the show. They took screenshots, they compared them, they did lots of different things. And what they realized collectively is that actually that scene, that kiss, was filmed twice. So what the Love Island producers were trying to tell us, that what the story they were trying to tell us was that this was an awkward kiss, it was a one-time thing, and it was kind of, an awkward moment. Whereas actually what the audience independently uncovered by acting together on social media and doing a bit of investigatory work, they realized actually that kiss had been filmed twice. So this story about how it was a one-off kind of awkward kiss was not true. It was a complete lie sold to us by the producers of Love Island to try and, create some controversy. So I think that's a really, really fascinating example of audience power, of the fact that we've got so much more agency. And we've got this thing, thanks to the kind of the communicative and power of the internet and social media, we've got this thing called collective intelligence, which previous scholars have talked about before. We can pool our knowledge and our experience and our expertise to uncover the truth that we're and to kind of challenge the reality that reality TV producers present us with. So that's why I think Love Island is particularly interesting, as well as just being a generally excellent piece of entertainment for us all to enjoy.
I've got a question, if that's all right. So I think it's really interesting when you talk about how the audience have more power, and we obviously, I'm a big Love Island fan, clearly. We saw the huge controversy. Love Island that year was watched by more people than the England football matches, which, is mind-blowing because we know how much people in England like football. And the power, the volume of tweets, the way that people were engaging with it, as you say, is just really phenomenal. And it kind of definitely made them shape the show slightly differently. So I guess I wonder, do you think that that's something that will change how reality TV is moving forward? Do you think we'll see more of that kind of engagement? Or do you think that kind of changes what reality TV is altogether?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a good question. I mean, one of the things that I was thinking about when I was thinking about this example and the fact that there's this kind of audience power which challenges what producers are doing is that from the producer's point of view, they might say, oh, okay, we've been caught in a lie here. But also, I mean, there's that thing about, there's no such thing as bad coverage. This is creating a conversation, it's creating a buzz, it's getting retweets, it's getting more likes, it's making Love Island the top thing on Twitter that's most tweeted about, so it's driving consumption, it's driving hits to Love Island's social media. So, I wondered whether the producers would be annoyed that they get caught in a lie, but actually I think they probably quite like it because it just creates more controversy. And I think certainly they've been very clear that the producers of Love Island, and you can find this in some simple Google search. They've been doing interviews and things around the fact that they specifically target consumption via social media as one of their key ways to monetize the show. So I think the only thing that it really means is that more and more reality TV is going to try and make sure that you're not just watching it on TV, you're also talking about it online. And if you watch anything on TV, whether it's reality TV or not, the first thing you see when the show starts is that little thing at the bottom which says, the hashtag, and then it's the hashtag that they want you to use to then talk about this on Twitter. So I think this is a reality of how we consume TV content now. We're not supposed to just be sitting on our sofas watching it in silence. We're supposed to be sitting watching it whilst we're on our phones, also tweeting about it at the same time. I do wonder if that means we're paying any attention to what's on TV, but yeah, I think that's really what it means. And so this example of, this big controversy, I think they like it because it just creates more conversation, more noise around the show.
So are we saying that what's happened is that reality TV producers and production companies have not only found a way to exploit their participants, but they've found a way to exploit audiences as well? So, that we're just being dragged into what looks like a power game, and oh, hooray, we're changing how the reality TV is produced. But at the same time, we are, like you say, adding to the hits, adding to the money. Like it's all just a big game. I mean, I don't know if I'd call that power, I guess is my point.
Yeah, I suppose it depends, doesn't it? It depends the extent to which the producers want to be caught, in a lie. If they want to be caught in a lie, then and they're just setting us up to be caught and to make us think that we're in charge, but ultimately all we're doing is monetizing that controversy for them. Yeah, I don't know. I think sometimes there have been instances of I have to believe that we do have some power as audiences, and that we are uncovering these kind of warped realities that we've been presented with. But maybe you're right. Maybe it's an illusion. It's yet another illusion of reality that we're not really in power. We're just helping them make more money here.
Do you think it's changed how people have viewed other forms of media as well? So, like, where you're questioning the reality of reality TV, do you think it's had an impact on how we view the reality of the news? Or, there's a lot of conspiratorial thinking around at the moment. Twitter is full of it. Do you think it's had an impact?
I don't know. I mean, I think that's a good question. I think more broadly, like you said, there seems to be more questioning of everything. We live in an era of fake news and alternative facts, and the quite warped conspiracy theories seemingly becoming mainstream. Certainly, it appears in the US. So who knows? I mean, maybe there is this general kind of cultural movement towards questioning what we're told, and I think people now certainly have accepted that things like, Keeping Up with the Kardashians is just completely scripted. There's no sense that anyone really believes that anymore. But I suppose the other question is, which is something we can think about, is whether anyone cares. I think people know that the Kardashians isn't real, but they still enjoy it because it's kind of fun. Things like Selling Sunset, there was, which by the way is awesome. There was a big piece in the BBC recently about how true to life is it. But then I was thinking, who cares? Who cares if it's true to life? I'm not here for whether it's true or not. I'm here for the amazing houses and the parties that they're having. If it's true, I don't really care. So I think there is a kind of question about whether we even want reality TV to be real. And maybe we want some forms of it to be more authentic, and other forms we accept that they're not supposed to be. I don't know. Anyway, Kitty, let's have a think about your example, because I know you've got a good one that everybody loves. So you go ahead and tell us a little bit about your example.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about RuPaul's Drag Race, which, if we're talking about cultural phenomenons and shows that have kind of gone global and have really kind of become part of mainstream kind of language and the way we kind of maybe think a little bit, we can see RuPaul as being a really good example of this. So RuPaul's Drag Race, to kind of give you a little bit of an overview, has been running since about 2009, and it's a series where RuPaul, who is a drag queen, is looking for the next drag superstar. So we see this lots of contestants come along, and they're looking to try and be the next big drag queen. So the series starts with kind of let's say 10 to 15 of them, and each week they do different tasks that might involve kind of making costumes. It might involve kind of photo shoots, kind of doing little acting scenes, singing, etc. All the different kind of components of what seems to make a good sort of drag king or queen. And we see them kind of competing each week, and it culminates in a runway show where they all wear the outfits that they've been kind of making through that week. And then the bottom two contestants, who are sort of seen to have done, not so well that week, are judged by a panel which is led by Rupaul, and then a range of other kind of celebrity guests. And we see them kind of do what's called a lip sync battle. And this is one of the things that's become really famous and kind of become part of kind of popular discourse and language. And effectively, the two remaining contestants battle it out in a sort of dance sing-off to remain in the competition. So I think this has become something that has been watched. Its audience viewing figures are massive, and it's a franchise, and it's gone all around the world. And we've seen recently it become part of a UK one. So it started in America, and now there's a UK specific version. And I think it's interesting for us to engage with for a number of reasons. Obviously, as I said earlier, my kind of main interest is gender and masculinity. And I think it gives us a really interesting lens through which to see how people view gender, and it kind of allows us to see sort of more diverse forms of gender that might normally be on mainstream TV. So I think it's particularly interesting because it allows us to sort of see people performing and doing gender in a different way. So we're used to sort of seeing men historically undertaking particular roles, particular kind of characteristics on a lot of TV representations. And through this reality kind of TV medium, we're seeing very, very diverse different performances, which, okay, arguably still fit around some heteronormative kind of structures, but we're seeing the kind of capacity and potential for men to have different agency, to show different sides or versions of masculinity, which deviates massively from TV shows such as like SAS Who Dares Wins, Love Island, as we've mentioned before. So I think it's really interesting because it's kind of allowed us to, as I said, sort of see gender in a different way, and to kind of, I guess, kind of capture the fluidity of gender, and to kind of be able to view that a little bit differently. And I think the most interesting thing is, as Xavier was saying about the Love Island example, is that it has become part of popular culture. You could consume it in lots of different ways. It's got a massive following. You can, buy merchandise. The language is used a lot. The kind of gestures, there's a lot of clicking, and people sort of are doing that within their own interactions. So again, I think this kind of particular case of reality TV is interesting, and kind of allows us to see different versions of identities, and particularly gendered identities, in a way that might not be necessarily present in other forms of television.
Yeah, I'm smiling because you're just saying about how it's become part of the cultural mainstream, and me and my wife regularly tell each other to sashay away, or we tell each other congratulations. So yeah, absolutely. No, I think it's a brilliant example. I mean, I love it, and as you said, I think it shines a light on different performances of gender, which is invaluable. And we talk about the place and the value of reality TV in contemporary society, and one thing that it does do, and sometimes it does it, I think, as a result of controversy. Sometimes it does it, I think, in a nicer way, which RuPaul is an example. But it does shine a light on hidden sections of society, on hidden topics in society, on underrepresented populations. It also does the opposite sometimes in a negative way, but it does do a bit of that. So I think that's where you can think about the value of reality TV. What I think is interesting, though, is you're right, and you mentioned SAS Who Dares Wins, and so what you see in those two examples really is the full spectrum, isn't it, of sort of gender performance on reality TV, right from kind of hyper masculinity, and sort of like hyper aggression, what it is to be a man, and then on the other end, the other end of the spectrum of kind of masculinities, which is just fascinating. That's what you get just from two examples of reality TV. Adam, I don't know if you've got any thoughts, so if you want to just sashay away for us.
Well, I just thank you very much. I just moving on from that point, I suppose, is So you've got one presentation of hypermasculinity and this other presentation of kind of, you know, diverse forms of gender identity and gender expression, etc. Are they preaching to the converted though? Are they actually finding other audience? You know, is Drag Race going to have an impact on those people who are watching SAS and are into the, you know, the grr stuff? You know, or is it just another part of this wider forms of polarization in society? You know, there are different bubbles. Is there, I don't know if there's any evidence on this, but is there any crossover or any evidence of cultural impact more broadly?
I guess it's difficult because you're either going to be interested in watching one thing or the other, and I guess you'd have to do some data collection on who's watching both of those TV shows. But I think the significant thing is that shows like RuPaul's Drag Race are sort of normalizing different versions of gender identity, gender expression. And whilst, okay, someone that watches SAS may not watch RuPaul's Drag Race, I think it's important that they're both on primetime TV. I think for a while they were on the same channel even. So I think we're sort of, you're right, there's question marks surrounding the extent to which will it make change. But, you know, for example, my mum and dad, you know, they would probably not know loads about drag. And then, you know, you talk to them about an example, or they might switch on. And, you know, I guess it's the fact that it's mainstream, it's on at like prime time, 9 o'clock or whatever. I guess that will mean that maybe it's part of a maybe slower change and a slower kind of acknowledgement and of difference and kind of acceptance of that. You know, we see Strictly Come Dancing has just had this season in the UK, same kind of two people who identify as the same gender dancing together in a partnership, which is obviously very different to how it's been before. And I think that's really significant in the sense of acceptance and normalizing of these things. And you know, like that's viewed by obviously primetime Saturday night, particularly with lockdown, no one else is doing much else. So, you know, that I think is, I guess there's going to be, you know, from a feminist perspective, they often talk about these kind of waves of change and kind of moments. And I guess it's going to take a while, but these kind of things being on the television, and that's, I think, the beauty of reality TV and the value of it is that it's helping us kind of see difference. And maybe, I don't know if we can say it will cause change, but it's at least kind of allowing those kind of who might be marginalized to sort of be a bit more visible.
Even that it's on television is a good signal, and that there's a potential there. I guess my next question would be then, with SAS Who Dares wins, and I've not watched it in depth, I must admit, is it unremittingly hypermasculine, like, or is there any fissures in there about, you know, different ways of performing masculinity even in that sort of show?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting one. I mean, I'm a big fan. It makes me sound like I just watch all trash TV, but it's true. So SAS Who Dares Win is really interesting because it does depict the traditional notion of masculinity. These are a group of men, and in the series more recent, like 2 years ago, they allowed women to be part of it. And these people are doing the same kind of training as kind of Secret Service, Special Forces kind of people would, and it's a sort of 2-week compressed exercise where they have to prove themselves and see if they pass that test. So obviously it aligns with very traditional kind of what we would call hegemonic sort of dominant views of masculinity, which have been popular in society over time. And there's little moments, I guess, where we see that change. And what's interesting particularly about that program is that a lot of the instructors who are ex-special services, when they're not in the show, do a lot of work on ideas around PTSD and men's mental health and kind of well-being post being part of that kind of very rigid, kind of often kind of military sort of identity and community. So for the majority of the series, you see them, as you would expect, being really brutal, sort of shouting, and, you know, the instructors sort of treating them sort of like you would imagine in any kind of military setting. But there are moments where you see sort of sides to the masculinity, and, you know, it's been interesting watching the females become part of that because they're expected to perform masculinity, really, basically. But we're seeing little moments where, you know, people like might express emotion, and that's not necessarily suppressed. You know, people kind of, you know, often people hug each other at the end of you know, whilst when they get eliminated, if you like, and we see moments, and I think that gives us insight and hope into the fact that those masculine identities, which maybe traditionally have just been always depicted as kind of tough, strong, lacking emotion, I think we do see in those TV programs moments where there's change. And again, you know, that's not the whole program, but I think those tiny little pockets of that we can use so that masculinity potentially is changing. And as you said, Adam, I think that just shows that there is potential for, you know, the fact that these things are being shown is half of the battle, really.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's good that you went ahead, Adam, because I was just about to make the same point as you were, just about the fact that these things are on TV in the first place. And so there's something to be said just about the visibility of them, isn't there? And that's the kind of platform that these shows at least give. At least they're visible. Whether people then go and consume them or not, you know, I guess we may not know. Well, there'll be audience figures, but we don't know those just now. Let me just move on then. I mean, I think they're really kind of illustrative examples. And one of the things that I guess we can pull out from all of them is that they have some value, right? They have some value, whether it's kind of cultural value, whether it's value in uncovering or giving more platforms to hidden populations, whether it allows people to perform different types of identity. Clearly, there's some value to them. But what I kind of wrestle with when we think about reality TV is the fact that we still talk about this as something almost shameful. I mean, Kitty described it as trash TV. You know, there's a lot of people who talk about Love Island as kind of like a guilty pleasure. And I just wonder why that persists, that sense of shame, that sense that you know, this isn't kind of worthy of attention. And I think, you know, if we're honest, if we get a little bit of that from our colleagues, the idea that as academics, it's almost beneath us to be analysing this stuff and to be talking about it. So there's almost, I would say, I might put a few noses out of joint, there's almost a kind of an intellectual snobbery, I think, about reality TV as something that's worthy of attention. What do you guys think?
As I've mentioned a couple of times,
and we don't want to fall out with all of our colleagues.
Oh no, not at all. As I've said a couple of times, my previous experience is in humour studies, and there's a very similar thing in sociology about looking at anything that's non-serious. And I wonder if that's possibly part of the reason why reality TV is not seen as a legitimate form of or a legitimate thing to study, because it's not straight down the line serious. It has, like we said earlier, comedic elements. It's trying to entertain, but that doesn't necessarily mean it doesn't have any, like you say, cultural value. But even if it doesn't have a cultural value, we still need to look at it to understand, well, in what ways is it not culturally valuable? So I just think it's that ambiguity almost between styles of seriousness and non-seriousness that sociology has a difficulty with grappling with sometimes. And so I don't know if snobbishness comes out of that, but certainly a reluctance to engage with these forms of culture are apparent for sure.
Yeah, I talk in my third year about this in a module that I do in the department, and it's called The Value of Sociology, and we basically question why sociology is interesting and why we should study it. And I think, you know, reality TV is watched by so many people, and it's something that is a big part of people's lives, whether that's for escapism and whether people feel a bit guilty about it and they admit talking about it or not. But I think, therefore, you know, as academics and just generally, if it's that important in people's lives, we kind of need to engage with it and talk about it. And I remember Xavier and I, when we decided to write some papers on Love Island, you know, some people in our department were kind of like, right, okay, you know, is that like a little hobby that you're doing? And actually, what's funny and slightly ironic is those papers have been viewed way more than any other sort of paper we've written about, like, more kind of sort of serious sociology. So yeah, I kind of think I do sometimes feel frustrated, and I think maybe it's a societal thing, because, you know, it reflects a societal kind of what people value and what's considered sort of serious. And, you know, and as Xavier said, I called it trash TV earlier without really even thinking that I'd done that, because I think we're just conditioned maybe to think of, there's a hierarchy, isn't there, of kind of what you watch and what's sort of deemed to be kind of interesting or sort of reputable media, and I guess reality TV is often not seen to be that. But I think, as we've talked about today, and as I talk about with my students, you know, if something is that significant, you know, I think we've got a responsibility to look at it. And, you know, if some people think that that's a bit sort of silly or frivolous, then, you know, they're lost. Maybe I don't know. But there's, yeah, I think, as you say, Xavier, there's definitely, I don't want to say a snobbery necessarily, but definitely kind of, it's still like a bit taboo in a way to talk about these things. But I just think, I mean, I think it's great. I think it's interesting, and it just allows it. It's accessible, isn't it? It allows us to have these conversations. It's opening up dialogues. It's kind of depicting different kind of groups and individuals and identities in society. You know, lots of intersects with so many different sort of sociologically significant themes like gender, age, identity, class. So, you know, yeah. I'll keep studying it for as long as I can.
What I find interesting is that it seems to me that the people who don't watch reality TV kind of dismiss it, right? And then the people who do watch it almost need to justify it to themselves that they're watching it, rather than just being able to purely enjoy it or to find immense value in it. So as I said, you know, it links back to this idea of like the guilty pleasure. So we admit that we enjoy it, but we sort of feel a bit ashamed about it. We need to justify it somehow.
No, I was talking to one of my friends who lives in Canada about this at the weekend, about how he doesn't watch these things, but his girlfriend does, and yet he sort of usually drifts in and out, and he can, like, you know, he sort of does the cooking at the same time and sort of has half an eye on it, and yet can name everything about all the characters, and, you know, kind of knows all the details. He doesn't necessarily sit down and watch it, but he kind of engages with it, you know, through, I don't know, maybe he admitted that maybe he sort of has a little look at Twitter or social media, and there is something about the fact that maybe, as you say, people don't want to necessarily sort of like sit down and be like, right, I'm going to dedicate time to that, but it sort of sucks. It has, reality TV has like the power to suck people in, and unless you live under a rock, you know, Love Island, when it's on, even if you choose not to watch it, it's like sport, isn't it? People all kind of have some kind of engagement or interaction with it, whether you just are annoyed that it's popped up on your Twitter or it's on the front of, like, you know, the news or whatever. Like, yeah, it's something that I think a lot of people participate in, but maybe don't necessarily admit to.
Well, I think the example of your friend is perfect here, because, you know, I think of, and how's this for a link to criminological theory, right? There's this work on techniques of neutralization, right? And it's Sykes and Matzer writing about this in the 1960s. And what they tell us is that you can rationalize deviance. You can kind of justify to yourself why you're committing crimes, and that allows you to drift in and out of deviance and non-deviant behavior. And they talk about things like, you know, if you commit a crime, you say, well, it wasn't my fault. So like it's diffusion of responsibility, or you appeal to higher loyalty. So I committed this crime because, you know, I'm part of a gang and I was doing it because I'm loyal, or all different ways to kind of neutralize your behavior to yourself. And it's the same thing with reality TV, right? When we watch it. So, oh, I only watch it because my girlfriend watches it. Or I only watch it because that's all that's on. Or I'm watching it, but I'm not really enjoying it. So we sort of like neutralize, and we justify to ourselves why we're watching it as if we need to. And we don't need to, we can just enjoy it. But there's kind of this cultural shame, or, you know, sense of shame persists that it's not something that should be enjoyed. And I wonder, I don't know if I'm overreaching here. I wonder if there's a class issue here. You know, I wonder if it's kind of, you know, the idea that people who take part in reality TV are from a lower social class. People who watch it, therefore, are from a lower social class. And I kind of see this replicated a little bit with football and some forms of sport. And so far as, you know, I think football has become much more of a middle class sport in the last, say, 20 years. But back in the 80s, it was very much a working class sport, and it's kind of seeped into the mainstream as a result of various, you know, forces, including the creation of the Premier League, and it's made it much more accessible to families and things. But I feel like I see something similar a little bit with reality TV, and the fact that, you know, certainly kind of, I don't know, bloody middle-class intellectuals have to sort of pretend like they don't like reality TV. They have to just sort of, you know, either say they don't like it, or kind of say they watch it, but just because of X, Y, and Z, and they're not really enjoying it. I don't know. I just find it interesting that this shame persists, this kind of guilty pleasure idea.
Oh, I mean, on that, there is evidence that class is a huge impact on at least the reception of reality TV. So I'm aware of the work of Skeggs and Wood on reacting to reality TV, and they present a little bit of evidence in one of their methods papers about a middle class woman who mentions that she watches Super Nanny. And when it's pointed out to her that Super Nanny is reality TV, she sort of starts like she didn't quite realize that was what she was watching. And then she launches, as you said, about rationalization, techniques of rationalization. She launches into this rationalization of it. Oh, it's got very good tips about how you look after your children, about this, that, and the other. It's very educational, and then dismisses quite explicitly dismisses the reality TV parts of it. And there is a real sort of respectability politics involved in the watching of, the reception of, and the enjoyment of. I think we should probably say as well, because we by doing this podcast on reality TV, we're sort of playing into this, like, oh, look at the academics talking about reality TV in academic ways. Isn't there a value in it of that? We should also say we fucking love it. We love it. We love this TV. We really enjoy watching this TV. It's not just about writing the papers and doing the podcast, blah, blah, blah. It's also love it, really enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean, really important point.
Yeah, like Xavier and I were talking, we watched Love Island for ages, didn't we? And then we were suddenly like, hang on, could we? Like, you're telling me I can do some work on this? I was like, sign me up. We were like, but yeah, I think but it does feel a little bit like we were kind of coming out in the department, doesn't it? We were like, oh, we're going to talk about Love Island, and everyone was like, ooh, controversial. And it was quite interesting, people's reactions. But yeah, us three have no shame. We absolutely love it. And it's obviously a really interesting point to talk about, and something that a lot of people engage with. So, yeah.
No, I think that's a very important point from Adam. First and foremost, we watch reality TV because we like it. It's a happy accident that we can also discuss it kind of sociologically, if you like, or we get papers and things like this out of it. But I think it's really interesting, this idea. It's almost like a hierarchy of acceptable reality TV. So, I think at the very top must be Strictly, and then below that maybe is Bake Off. And it's this thing of like, Bake Off, I get lots of tips for how to bake, and I can bake along and do all these other things. But then at the very bottom is, kind of like your Love Island or your things like that, which are seen as completely frivolous and of no value. So yeah, I think there is, and I think we've talked about this before, the idea of whether people even realize that they're watching reality TV, and it's a good point about the Super Nanny example. And I think likewise, if you told some viewers of Bake Off that, well, this is reality TV, they might say, well, it's not quite reality TV, it's not Big Brother, but it is. That's exactly what it is. It's just a different version of it. So again, kind of that rationalizing of what you're watching. Well, it's not really reality TV. Well, it is, and you should just enjoy it and admit it. Good. Well, that was a good chat. Have we got any final comments before I do my wrap up?
Oh, you go for
wonderful. It. Good, right. Well, there's not much to say. I think the point which you made, Adam, is probably a nice way to finish, which is, hopefully we've given you some interesting insights about why we think reality TV is worthy of academic attention. But much more important than that, it's just the fact that you can just bloody enjoy it, and you don't have to justify the fact that you enjoy it. So once you finish listening to this or looking at this, go and find some reality TV and just watch it all day long. Right. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Cheers. See you soon.